You know, Five Nights at Freddy's has never been short on contrasting opinions. Or blazing fires. So today I thought, what the heck, why not take a trip down into the fiery depths of Fnaf's red-hot takes once more? Are you ready? Hope you brought an ice pack because we've got some scorching hot ones today. So let's get started. Funtastical writes, Lolbit is overrated. It's just a recolored Funtime Foxy, except it isn't even real cause it's just inside games and custom nights. But people like it more than Funtime Foxy, even though he's the much better character, even though he's always ignored. But why? I don't get it. That is a good point. Compared to Funtime Foxy, Lolbit really is just kind of a cameo character at best. But I think that's part of Lolbit's charm and their popularity, coming from those side appearances. They're a bit of an enigma, and when they do show up, they're able to be a little more goofy or mysterious since it's almost exclusively inside content. Funtime Foxy, on the other hand, has always been very popular, but has always kind of fallen by the wayside because while he has gotten more than Lolbit to do, it's still been kind of on the lighter side. Lolbit is just enough of a blank slate that people can put their own headcanons onto him, to the point where they have kind of become this sort of goofy character despite the fact it hasn't really shown up in mainline games. While Funtime Foxy has just a little bit more, just enough to give him a very specific characterization that maybe allows a little less wiggle room. So that, I think, is part of the reason, but also I think there's other things. Lolbit's design, the whole TV mechanic. Fanworks have definitely helped bolster their popularity. I think it's pretty multifaceted, but I think it's a little bit of an oversimplification just to say, well, Funtime Foxy is the real character, so they should be more popular. It's a little more complex than that. And I say this as someone who doesn't have a dog in the fight. I like both characters, but I wouldn't say either are my favorite. But I do get what you're saying. Purple Maniac Fnaf writes, I don't think we put enough blame on the parents of Fnaf. They let their kids run around Freddy's alone, and in the books they pay no attention to them. Then they end up getting killed, and we're not supposed to blame the parents? Where was Henry when Charlotte was locked outside of Freddy's and killed behind it? He talks about how much he suffered, but where was he? I mean, first and foremost, it is the killer's fault, and the fault of the ignorant employees at Freddy's who often overlooked these kids wandering around and into the back rooms. There's no denying that, and then covered up for them. There's no denying that. But you do have a point as well. The parents in Fnaf, as far as we know from what we've seen of things like the books and the games and the movies, most of the time we do see a good amount of negligence. Sometimes it's as simple as a parent is too busy and not like overly working, such as in the books where almost every single parent is so busy at work that they don't notice what their kid's getting into. With some exceptions, but most of the time that's the case. Or in the movies, like when we see in Fnaf 2, when none of the parents care that there's a kid running around saying that she needs help. Or in the games when the parents that we do know of were shown to be negligent. It's one thing to let your kid get out of your sight. Sometimes it happens and it's okay. But it does become a problem when we're seeing kids getting murdered over and over and over again. And then we have cases like in VIP, where the main character's mother is like, there's something sketchy going on, and yet still allows her kids to go to Freddy's unsupervised. So, yeah, I would put at least some blame on the parents for at least not keeping a better eye out, especially once Freddy's started to get its reputation. Springboard Gal writes, the Mimic is really cool, and everyone's just being mean about him. William is dead. Move on. Yeah, I've definitely warmed up to the Mimic for a while, but I can understand why people are still attached to William. It's hard to express how much William has been the face of the franchise. William Afton, Springtrap, I would say he's the main character, and not only in the sense that he's the most recognizable, but whenever he's really in anything, he steals all of the spotlight, and that's not necessarily a bad thing for a villain. But it does mean that when you have another villain coming to take their place, those are big shoes to fill. So yeah, I have definitely started to see the Mimic in more of a positive light, but I can not only see why people were disappointed in what happened with the mix-up of Mimic mimicking William Afton, but I kind of think that having Mimic originally start by being a mimic of William Afton kind of made the situation worse than if the story just immediately jumped from William straight to Mimic. Completely different. Moonman writes, everybody always gets Sun wrong. They always portray him as this big kid who loves arts and crafts, but he's really just some neurotic weirdo who bullies kids into painting his dumb pictures. That's a lot worse than Moon chasing Gregory around. So I'm kind of split on this, because Sun has a pretty complex character. When we're looking at Security Breach and Ruin and Help Wanted 2, it's clear that there's a lot more going on with Sun than just he's big and bubbly and wants to play all the time, but it's also not as simple as Sun is just sassy and angry all the time. I feel like both parts come together in a character who just is pretty exhausted. I think in Help Wanted 2, seeing how fussy Sun gets is definitely a result of how absolutely exhausted he is. Specifically because of Moon. We also don't know the situation surrounding the pictures. He does mention when he's shredding them sometimes that Fazbear Entertainment owns the rights, so him shredding them might just be like something he's been told he has to do. They put the shredder in the daycare for a reason. I think, though, saying that everyone gets Sun wrong is kind of like an overgeneralization. The original version of Sun that everyone subscribed to is really everything Sun was when it came to Security Breach. Now we're seeing more layers of him, but that doesn't take away that first impression. And no, I don't necessarily think that's worse than chasing around kids, but I digress. Dimeback Rocker writes, why wasn't William's suit a Freddy suit? The game is called Five Nights at Freddy's. Freddy should be the main character, but instead William is Bonnie and that makes him more popular. The main villain is always some kind of rabbit now, and Freddy barely does anything. You actually raise a good point. I mean, think about it. If Afton had been using a Golden Freddy suit, not only would it be more thematically appropriate with Freddy being the titular character, but the amount of spirits assumedly attached to that suit would make a lot more sense. Imagine how many kids would have gotten attached to a suit they were killed with. Now, I really like Springtrap's design, so I'm not sure if I would say that the entire aesthetic should change, and I can't necessarily say that if it was Golden Freddy, it would necessarily be better, because I definitely think that Springtrap has a vibe to him that's a little hard to match. But I do agree that it would have probably made more sense if it was Golden Freddy that was used for the suit instead of this Golden Bonnie. Big Cool Guy writes, the only reason anyone cares about Glamrock Bonnie is because of Freddy's getting sad over him. If Freddy didn't say anything, nobody would even care that Glamrock Bonnie is gone because he was boring. All of the Fnaf Bonnies have sucked except for Springtrap, and that's just because he's actually William Afton the GOAT. I don't think that's necessarily true, but you do have a point. Not the Bonnie sucking thing, but that the reason that so many people are invested in Glamrock Bonnie is because of Freddy. Freddy's grief, his somber and cryptic comments about Bonnie, are the first thing to introduce us to his missing bandmate, and immediately adds emotional stakes where elsewise we wouldn't have had any. Animatronic gets replaced in an attraction? Definitely something to theorize over, but it's not until we have this sort of spark, this emotional drive to sort of fuel the curiosity, that it goes from being just another point of theorizing to a story beat that hits a little harder, especially with all the stuff surrounding it. But I think on the whole I would disagree, because even if Freddy didn't bring up Glamrock Bonnie and wasn't sad about him, I think there probably still would have been people wondering where Glamrock Bonnie was just by the fact that he's shown in the Pizzaplex and is shown in the messages. It still would have been an interesting point to think about and talk about, but I don't think it would have gotten as much traction without having Freddy involved. Baby Girl writes, I think people brush off the idea of Will care too quickly. It's obvious that William loved his children since he tried to protect Elizabeth from Circus Baby, and reached out to Michael to have him help her. People just assume the worst because he was a murderer, but there was no evidence that he murdered any of his children. I mean, by that logic, there wasn't any evidence that he loved his children either. He let Elizabeth attend a party with Baby there, knowing what Baby could do. He neglected the crying child, he sent Michael down to Circus Baby's rentals to unleash Baby, aware of the threats and sending a look-alike as a scapegoat. Unless Michael just, found a note and went down there himself. There's questions about if one of his kids was sent down into his strange observation bedroom underneath the facility as well. And that's not even talking about the fact that it was confirmed in the fourth closet that he was hitting Elizabeth, a book that became very important because of its connections with Pizzeria Simulator, which came out very shortly after it. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting headcanon, this idea that William Afton was actually this loving, caring father, but there's not really any evidence for it currently. There is enough lack of evidence and lack of clarity that there is a possibility that it could be squeezed in there somewhere, but as of right now, it's not there. And on the contrary, there is enough reason to believe that William Afton truly loved only one person, and that was himself. Spaghetmon writes, Molten Freddy is overhated but kind of dumb. That's weird. I actually haven't seen a lot of people who hate Molten Freddy. In fact, largely I see a lot of indifference for people about Molten Freddy. And you know what? In a way, that's almost worse. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And that's not to say that, nobody cares about Molten Freddy, but he definitely seems to have a little less of a foothold in the fandom than other characters. So I wouldn't say he's overhated. I don't think that many people hate him. Now, is he dumb? That kind of depends. Yes, I definitely think in a sense he is kind of dumb, considering some of the choices he made with specifically his body. But is the concept dumb? No, I actually think the concept is pretty clever. Funtime Freddy overtaking the body and turning it into his own image. I just think it's a little more underutilized than it could have been. Sir Hippopotamus writes, oh my god, I am not reading that. Topper writes, the Mimic is a great new character and it is crazy people keep pretending he is not. Give him a little respect, please. We're getting a lot of Mimic defenders tonight. Okay, not really too much to say that I didn't say the last time. Moving on. The Pirate King writes, I'm fond of how Foxy's getting much deserved attention, but I think they be softening him up too much. Part of what makes Foxy so great is that he is the roughest of Freddy's gang. He's supposed to steal parties, not throw them. I think you're onto something, but I think on the whole, I kind of disagree. It is true, Foxy, when he was introduced, was kind of the roughest and the scariest of the band, because he was up against Freddy, Chica, and Bonnie in the original Fnaf 1 game, not counting Golden Freddy. Foxy definitely was the cool one, and because of that, he became very popular very quick. And I think this sort of expansion on his character, which is kind of seems like a softening up, but it's more a growth of his brand, showing him as Captain Foxy and First Mate Foxy. I think this is actually in the long run doing better for Foxy than if he was just restricted to being the cool and the scary one, because what it's doing is it's actually expanding on that pirate character that we didn't really get to see much of in FNAF 1. He was just the one that could run. He was the one with the hook. He was the one that slid into the office. But now they're adding so much more to, if I may, the greater Foxy lore. And because of that, Foxy's staying around a lot longer than some of the other characters. So I think this has actually been a pretty good thing. Not all attention is good attention, but I don't necessarily think this is bad attention. Marion Not Your Name writes, Queen of Cupcakes writes, I hate what they did with Toy Chica in FNAF 2. Like, it was cool having her be such a big part of the movie because she's pretty much the best toy animatronic, and they did so much good stuff with her. So why did they just make it turn out to be the puppet controlling her the whole time? OMG, that's so stupid. The puppet already had stuff it was doing, like, with its whole sad backstory thing. Why couldn't they just let Toy Chica be cool? That's so lame. 0 out of 10 would not watch again. So, I don't necessarily think that Toy Chica being controlled by the puppet is a bad thing. In fact, I think the puppet breaking out of Toy Chica was probably the coolest puppet scene in the movie, because most of the puppet was just it possessing other people. Just humans with the face paint of the puppet, but not the actual puppet. It breaking out of Toy Chica was actually really neat. But I think that you are raising a good point, and that's that really the other toy animatronics didn't get that much to do in the film. I mean, arguably, Toy Chica got way too much time compared to the other two. Think about it this way. Toy Chica had like a whole arc where she befriends Abby practically alone. They go to school. She shows up as a science project. She beats up the teacher. Well, beats up. She takes Abby home, and then she's put out of commission when the puppet comes out of her. That's a lot of time for Toy Chica to get. On the contrary, Toy Freddy goes to like Faz Fest, says one line, and then he shows up later, but he's basically done. And Toy Bonnie goes to a kid's house, tries to stab her mom, and then he's also basically done. And Mangle kills someone at the beginning off screen, shows up on Vanessa's car, and then is kind of basically done after that. And that's not even getting into the withered animatronics. To be pretty blunt, Toy Chica blew everyone else out of the water, including the puppet. Even though she was controlled by the puppet, she got way more screen time than it, and every single other animatronic. And in a way that is kind of unfortunate, since the movie wasn't just supposed to be about Toy Chica, but, you know, it happens. Blondie Bunny writes, I love the direction they're going with Vanessa's story in the Fnaf film, so I hate that they're just going back to the possession plot. We finally had a moment of Vanessa going up against her captor, her father in this case, and then she's just tossed to someone else. Vanessa has to be the princess from Princess Quest because she just keeps getting metaphorically kidnapped by villains. And yeah, I kind of agree with that too. So, the thing about Vanessa is, it really feels like the second Fnaf movie actually gave Vanessa more of a reason for being there, while in the first movie she was basically just a love interest. A non-explicit love interest added into the story to be someone who could also get exposition from. She really kind of didn't need to be in the movie. She was there, she was an okay character, but she didn't need to be there. Fnaf 2 went out of its way to give Vanessa more of a complete character arc, dealing with her feelings about her father and her family, and trying to protect her new family and all that. And now it's looking like pretty much the third movie is just going to be mostly her possessed, probably just trying to recreate the Vanny feel from the game, or, heavens forbid, Hot Charlie. And it is kind of unfortunate because it does feel like retreading old ground, but also, I guess I don't really know what they would do otherwise with Vanessa's character, since they kind of just finished the arc she had about her father in the second movie's earlier half. So I guess this is kind of where it has to go. Jokester Boy writes, for a game about murder, there's not enough murder in Fnuf. The jump scares are too tame, and all of the really creepy stuff, like that guy cutting his face off, is just told to you. What is Snorefest? Even the mini-games are bloodier than the game in movies. I mean, yeah, for a series like Fnaf, we are told about murder a lot more than we see it. I mean, the series probably wouldn't get away with showing much murder, but, you know, Secret of the Mimic at least started showing bodies, so this is a step in the right direction, and the mini-games themselves also haven't held back, so that's a good way to get around the censors. Like, can we get one child murder, please? We don't have to see that much as long as you get the crunching noises right. I mean, that would be a pretty bold direction. But I don't think... Also, Glamrock Freddy is a huge sissy. I'd like to see some little brat like Gregory climbing inside my belly and thinking he was gonna call the shots. Well, let's be frank. Glamrock Freddy didn't know what he was doing anyway. He sent that kid all over the place. Where did he get the idea that sending him into the daycare was going to work? Anyway, I think we're done. Moving on. Hugs and Loves Doll writes, I feel so bad for the Mimic. Not only was he rejected by Edwin, but he's also been shunned by the Fnaf community as a whole. He's not that bad. We should all give him a chance. Yeah, I can agree with that. Not entirely. I don't think he's been shunned by the Fnaf community. I think there's a lot of mixed feelings on him, but I think we should maybe give him a chance. That's okay. That's a fair take. Sunny D. Light writes, everybody always gets Moon wrong. I keep seeing them trying to portray him as this misunderstood protector who just happened to get a virus that made him bad. Well, that is not the case. Moon was always a scoundrel bullying kids into napping. What's so misunderstood about that? So that is a fair-ish point. Other than a comment that Cassie makes about the Moon plushie that she finds in Ruin, we don't really have much evidence that Moon was ever softer or gentler than we see in Security Breach in the following games. But we do know for a fact that he is being controlled by a virus, and that he is under the control of Vanny. Help Wanted 2 pretty much laid that out flat to us, along with some of the other games. Moon is definitely being haunted by something. And since a lot of his behaviors resemble Vanny and Glitchtrap, it's not too far-fetched to think that maybe there's a possibility that there's a different Moon hiding underneath all of that corruption. Like, maybe there is really a gentler Moon in there, but maybe he was buried so deep that there's no retrieving him. At the very least, given Moon's popularity, I can see why people are giving him the benefit of a doubt. If Sun himself is so complex, why not Moon? Makes sense to me. And finally, Schmidt the fan writes, "Can we please stop simping over William Afton? He looks like Waluigi and he smells like stale beer and dead kids." As someone who personally doesn't simp over William Afton, I can tell you for sure, no, it's going to keep happening. There's nothing you can do to stop it. There is nothing that this man can do that will stop the internet from loving him. It's the Dave Miller complex. Funny enough, not named after the original William Afton, but the one from Day Shift at Freddy's. As long as you can make him gangly and goofy, he can squeeze his way into almost any heart, no matter how made of marble it is. And with that, I think it's time to come to a close. And I'm going to assume by now that you've figured out who these hot takes are actually coming from. And you've probably also noticed what day is coming up. It'd be too obvious to do it on the 1st, so happy April Fool's Day. I wanted to do something goofy, so I thought, what the heck, hot takes from the characters of Fnaf. But no worries, I'll be doing another real hot take video soon, so keep brewing up those burning opinions, okay? I'ma need some real spicy ones. Hope you had a good time, and thank you for watching.